Woomera Lawyers Group included at different times people such as Megan Philpott, Elizabeth Boxall, Tarana Hassan, Kate Chisholm, Rob McDonald, Father Frank Brennan, and now Justice Robin Layton, now Judge Gordon Barrett, now Judge Sydney Tilmouth, Claire O'Connor, Abby Hampden, Ray Hardigan, and many others. Today, it is very interesting from my perspective that Frank Brennan and Julian Burnside are key players in the debate about a Bill of Rights in Australia. And I'd like to talk a little bit about both of them. I first came upon Frank Brennan in mid-2001. The Woomera Lawyers Group was having a hard time in the Australian press at that time, to put it mildly. He came to Adelaide to talk about his ongoing work at that time involving Timor, and I spoke to him about our group and what we were doing and asked him if he could and would help. And he said he was. He was pleased to help, and he was available in early 2002, which is about 6 months away. And he gave me his mobile phone number, and dutifully, at a crisis time at the beginning in January 2002, I rang the number and said, "Frank, I need you to come." And he said, "Certainly, Jeremy, I'll be on the next plane." And true to his word, he came to Adelaide and was fronting up straight away in front of the media, in front of the TV cameras, and told Australia and the world about Woomera. And his reputation, profile and presence helped to give our group credibility. He took part in many trips to Woomera, he lobbied politicians, he did good work, and just by the way, he happens to be the son of the former High Court Chief Justice, Justice Brennan. I'll never forget one day picking up my mobile phone to take a message off it. It was about mid-2002. And Frank's always very polite, and the message ran along the lines of, "Hello, Jeremy. I hope you and your family are both well. Pass on my regards to them. I've just had lunch with my father, and he said to tell those people in South Australia it's about time they brought a habeas corpus action, preferably for a stateless Palestinian." And that led to the Al-Masri case, which, as it was referred to before, on the 15th of August 2002, we had the federal court allowing Akram Al-Masri to walk out of the detention centre. They tell me some of the guards were in tears because they were meant to hold these people there because they were bad, and yet the federal court was letting one of them walk free. The court said that he was being held illegally. The win was great, the impact was significant. He was a young man who simply wanted to stay in Australia because in Palestine he'd been shot, his mother had been killed, and he too was scared that he would be killed. Might I say, he did go back to Palestine and since has been shot twice. The first time he was injured with a bullet to the leg, the second time he was killed. Other cases followed, and that's the Al-Kateb and the Al-Kafaji cases. And Claire O'Connor, who's here today, of course, played a pivotal role in Al-Kateb. Eventually, the High Court effectively said that the human rights conventions didn't apply in Australia and that parliamentary law would prevail and that government had the ability to detain people indefinitely. Julian Burnside took up the fight in the B&B case in the full court of the family court. It was a case that I was very involved in, and I was not there this particular day in the full court of the family court, but a very reliable source came and told me afterwards that Julian did a fantastic job that day, and that job meant that those children were released from the detention centre, much because of Julian's brilliant advocacy. And that meant that we had the children who were released from the detention centre being able to live in the Adelaide community under the care of Centrecare, under the supervision of Dale West. That was an important moment because it showed Australians that the faces of these children which weren't much different to our own children. And it led to the beginning of the end of children in detention, which was great. Some people may ask, why is the refugee stuff so important in South Australia in a debate about a national Bill of Rights? I say that South Australia is different than a lot of other states. We, in our proclamation when South Australia was established by the King, made it very clear that under the establishment of the colony, that natives were to have the same protections and rights as a British citizen. And South Australians were absolutely outraged about what had happened, that we had a detention centre set up in the desert in our backyard to treat these people the way they were. South Australia also was the engine room for the frontal attack upon the Howard government's treatment of Middle Eastern boat people who came here. Turning to my scepticism about a Bill of Rights, I believe Australians are a good people who generally do good things. And I don't believe that words can make us good. I'm proud to call myself an Australian. And it's 9 years on the 17th of October since I got involved in standing up for the boat people from the Middle East. And for a lot of us who were out there going to that detention centre felt the pain of those people. We made promises to them. We thought that the Labor Party was going to win the next election and that they were going to get a soft ride and they would eventually be accepted as Australians like the rest of us. And they believed those assurances and were sadly let down about how things turned out. So I've felt some of the pain of those people who were detained in that place. And the mean and the tricky Howard government's response to them was outrageous. I've laid awake at night time, as so many others have, wondering what I could have done in a better way to have told the Australian people about what's going on. I've laid awake thinking about how these people who came here had been told, as they used to tell me, that Australia was known as the golden asylum, the best place in the world to come. That if you were a genuine refugee, you were allowed to come and stay in Australia, because Australia was a signatory to the UN Convention on the Rights of Refugees. And having thought about these issues for some time, the reality is, from my perspective, is Australia has been living a lie. It's as if we are part of a very unhappy marriage and we're making out that we're happily married. The reality is that Australians, and especially white Australians, have a deep-seated fear that if we're not careful, that if we're not very careful, our big island will be swamped by people from Asia and beyond. It's the fear is we could lose what we have got. And John Howard would have to be one of the most consummate politicians of the modern era. He has survived where his two other former allies, the President of America and the Prime Minister of England, have been, their reputations have been somewhat sullied, to put it mildly. John Howard understood that fear. He understood that fear and he exploited it brilliantly for his own purposes. And I think and I believe that he will be remembered as a mean and tricky Prime Minister in due course. The convention, on the other hand, which we signed up to all those years ago, says that we will take as many people as turn up and want to live here who are genuine refugees.